So we're going to release this tomorrow, which is going to be the anniversary of 9/11. Did we overreact to 9/11?
Yes, we did. Yeah, there's no question we did. And that is common. I mean, for those of us who study the history of terrorism, the strategy of terrorism is about getting us to overreact. It is about poking and prodding us and humiliating us into thinking that we are helpless in protecting our own civilians. That is the psychological warfare that terrorism is based on. And it is about trying to provoke that overreaction. I mean, this is essentially, as has been characterized before, the war of the flea. It's about looking 1,000 times more powerful than you actually are. It's often in our overreaction to terrorism that we inadvertently generate sympathy for terrorists, and more often than not, we make the problem a lot worse.
Yeah, that's interesting because I'd read that terrorism increased over 7 times in the region after the invasion of Iraq. There's been some U.S. generals who said drone strikes create more terrorism than they kill. Do you feel that the use of force has backfired in any way in terms of quenching terrorism?
No, it hasn't. I mean, in some cases, I mean, the use of force would seem to be the only viable option,
Hmm.
particularly when there are training camps and there are select operatives that otherwise cannot be reached. That said, very often those who advocate for the use of force tend to see it as a panacea, a one-size-fits-all solution to the terrorism problem. And as has been said again many, many times before, we cannot either capture or kill our way out of the terrorism problem. So I think very often, and this is not to lay the blame at anyone other than terrorist organizations, of course, but
Right.
we talk ourselves into problems here by assuming that a complex problem like terrorism can have a simple solution. It is disheartening to me that 18 years after 9/11 we still talk about torture as if it's effective and useful, and whereas it's not only not effective, it is counterproductive. And so we tend to just fall back on rather limited assumptions and biases about what works. And I think we've got a long way to go to figure out that we need far smarter approaches to this.
Could you explain why torture is counterproductive?
Well, torture, experts on torture, people who have studied cases of it, former investigators at agencies like the Naval Criminal Intelligence Service, would say that torture has never produced reliable information. Yet we have this pervasive myth through Hollywood, through politicians, through high-ranking counterterrorism officials that it implicitly works, and that is a very, very dangerous assumption. And one of the greatest assets we can have in fighting terrorism is to uh, uh, essentially take the higher ground and maintain moral superiority in the way that we tackle this problem. Very often, all the torture does is simply feed the narrative that we are an enemy that needs attacking in the first place.
Is that because if you're being tortured, you'll basically just say anything to
Oh, for
stop the torture?
sure. Yes. I mean, I should have said that at the outset, but I mean, who among us wouldn't say anything to make torture stop? And I think what has been especially troubling has been this gradual erosion of norms over the years, and this idea that waterboard isn't really torture because there isn't lasting physical damage. I mean, it's really quite shocking just how far we have slided in over the years.